Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network. All right. Thank you, Mr. Producer. We are back right here, and I am joined by the one and only Mr. Thomas Smith. Thomas, so nice to see you, sir.
Yes.
Welcome back to the program. Glad to see you. And how's everything going, man?
It's going really well. Super excited about this show, what we're going to be talking about. So I'm just really glad to have you back as my a wingman.
All right. Hey, I'm so excited that you're here. First, can you kind of just backtrack a little bit in case people haven't heard you before? A little bit about what you do, and today's topic, by the way, is awesome. And we'll talk about that later. But let's just get the backstory first with Thomas. You got the floor, my friend.
Yeah. So basically, you and I go back several weeks, months, whatever, and we started this journey together. So what I want to do is give people the backstory, and they don't have to panic if they don't get all the shows. I take the links from you guys and put them onto my Facebook page so they can get them in sequence. I'm also working on, this is just kind of a prelude to the show, working on the DVD, so that way I can get it out to veterans. That's a in-home, step-by-step program, because what we're going to cover today is really super important. But I started my journey back in high school, getting ready to go play college football, and was injured. That didn't work out. My father was a Marine, so I grew up in a Marine home, super gungy. And so the Marines was really the best fit for me. I went and served 3 years and got out, and then started discovering that I've had different diagnoses as bipolar or depression and ADHD tendencies and things like that. So my research quest started back in the 80s. Yeah, I'm that old, right? And so most of my stuff that I teach about is practical application, because it's like it's what's happened to me, and so I want to know why. But then as I've gotten older, being a veteran and going to the VA and seeing all these poor broken down warriors, my heart, man, was just so heavy, and I'm like, God, if I could ever do anything. And so my life's journey has been bringing me up to this point right now, to where I've worked with enough veterans to get a really clear indication. I am a researcher. I'm not a doctor. I'm not kind of an authority, but I'm not rich and famous. This isn't about Tom Smith. This is about a veteran helping other brothers and sisters that are struggling. So that's kind of where we're at.
Gotcha. You know what? I never asked you, when you were active, how did these things that you were dealing with at the time, how did it affect your military career as a Marine in there? The ADD, the bipolar, did you have that when you were going through?
Oh yeah.
Tell me about
I've had that my whole life. I've had it my whole life. I didn't realize what it was until my early to mid 20s.
Did athletics kind of hone it in? Is that the one place where, I'm sure in the classroom, maybe you were, you couldn't really concentrate at times or whatever, but did athletics kind of hone you in?
Athletics kept me in school. My mother always told me, son, if you would just put 5% of the effort you put on a football field in the classroom, you'd make A's. Well, there's one thing being really super athletic and gifted, and there's another thing having a situation where you can't really function at a higher level. I'm not a traditional type student. I went to college a couple of times, and no, I'm a self-learner and an avid self-learner. I've researched for years, and that's why I call myself a researcher, because what I'm trying to do is take really difficult information, high-level information, and break it down so that way you and I and Joe Public can digest it and understand, oh, wow, that's me. Okay, now that makes sense. I understand that. Oh, I need to work on this and that. So, dude, I struggled in school terribly. And I've struggled as my adult life as well, because of some limitations. But I like to think what I know.
Yeah. And the reason why I ask is because, the athletics, I mean, you excelled at that. I mean, you were on point to, if you didn't get hurt, you were on point to go on and be a college athlete, right? And then, then going into be a Marine, you had that athleticism. I'm sure that came in handy.
Oh yeah.
And then at the time, and this is what we're going to talk about today, when that is over, you're always a Marine, but when your active part is over, what happens? And that's called the gap. And you're going to talk to us about that now, because that's a huge thing, isn't it? Let me ask your expertise on this one, because you lived it and you're helping people with it.
Right. So last week, just a real quick backstory. I was talking about we go into the military based on our profiles. I'm a gungy, wide open, oorah, oorah. So the Marine Corps fit my billet. You and I laughed a while back when I was talking about there's no way they're going to put me on a boat with 5,000 dudes. The Navy wasn't even, I'm not even going to talk to these guys, right? Love you. I'm glad you got to see the world, but no, we're not doing that. And so all the sailors are probably laughing. But then there's the Air Force guys and then the Army guys. And we all have different personalities and we have different traits. And so we match up with what's best for us. And so we choose that path, and then we go into the military. And what I talked about, and I want to just real quickly,
Please.
going into the military, they always talk about they tear you down and they build you back up. It's called hardwiring. That's what they're doing to the brain. Each of us have a certain amount of time. I think my boot camp was 13 weeks. Some of them may be 8. However long it takes them to be able to hardwire you in order to go into that branch and serve at that level is how much I was going to say brainwashing, but rewiring that it takes to be able to do that.
Wow.
So now you go into this world, this military world that is very structured, very intense. And you live in that world anywhere from most hitches are 4 years. So 4, 8, 12, whatever. And then here's the problem. This is the gap. This is what we're going to talk about right now. Then they've been living in this world. They came from a civilian world. They're hardwired to go into the military. They live this long period of time, hardwired to be able to do the task or mission, whatever it is that we have to do. And then we're discharged and we're sent back home. That gap is where the problems are, Casey, because what that means is we're playing catch up with the guys that are being discharged. They're already discharged. And brother, I'm talking about Vietnam vets. I work with Vietnam vets that are still in the jungles, hardwired.
Wow.
Been through, I don't know how many jobs, been through how many relationships, because that hardwire triggers you into everything else. It causes the depression. Depression is the underlying of everything that's going on with someone's mental health. So that gap, when they get out and they go in there, I think this is what I've been focusing on for quite a while now. What's happening to the brain? So we become hardwired. Then you go into the military, and then those that are in combat have now experienced trauma, which they call PTSD. That then again hardwires that part of the brain, and it's like I call it like branding. So you have all this going on, you're discharged, you go home, your kids, your wife, your parents, your friends, your siblings, everybody's like, oh man, we're so glad you're home. And they think they're going to pick right up and take off with you. We as veterans, from the time we're discharged until the time we come home, that gap is never fixed. That is the problem. I have studied under Paul Newham. He's out of the UK. That's where I've got my EMDR certification through. And so I am researching the brain to find out how we can remap the brain. And the thing that I find, Casey, it's encouraging and discouraging at the same time. There are authorities out there with lots of great information that's just not getting out, like EMDR. It's kind of new. It's hardwiring of the brain. It's a very specific science, but it helps people because within that gap, we have to take these veterans. This is what the program that I'm building does. It takes them and helps them remap their brain to be able to let some of that trauma be diminished. It's never going to go away, but it can be handled. People don't realize that this trauma that they bring home, it brings it home to their families. I talk to as many wives as I do veterans that are saying, I'm really super concerned because he's not
That's not the guy that I remember. He's something's different, right?
Totally. And they walk on eggshells. They love them. They want so badly. But let me just pause for a second, Casey, because I want every single person that hears what I'm saying to hear what I'm saying. All those who have ears, let me hear. Veterans, I'm talking to you, brother. I'm talking to you. Listen, what's happening in your brain is not how do I say this so that way you understand what's going on in your brain, and your DNA is created to help you in the fight or flight. Because when we were cavemen, you were either going to get eaten by the saber-toothed tiger or you're going to run. The heart rate builds up. But the brain has its own mechanism to shut down the fear and the pain and the trauma. We don't have control over that, Casey.
Wow.
We don't have control over that. That's what our brain is doing. So these guys that come home and all these clinicians from cookie cutter schools want to sit down and go, well, tell me about your experience. No. First off, brothers, listen to me. I'm talking to you right now. Veterans, listen to me, man. There's nothing wrong with you. It's your brain has taken over and shut down. There's nothing. You can come out of that world with the right person and open up and share, because until you open that scab up and you see the wound, you're never ever going to get better. You have to rewire. You have to acknowledge it, learn how to deal with it and control it. EMDR does that. It's basically eye movement. Well, this is too far back. It's eye movement, which I'll get into later. But right now, my message today is to the veterans. Guys, it's okay to let people know what you've experienced, because there's nothing wrong with you. A lot of them don't do it because they're guilty. They're afraid what people are going to think, especially in combat. They don't want to relive it. So the brain, Casey, takes over and will not let them go there because of the pain. Does that make sense?
It's like it's protecting it, almost like protecting the brain. Like sometimes, if there's an abuse or something, some people will just shut down right there and block stuff out, and you maintain right there. Is that kind of what we're talking about?
100% dead on. So it doesn't necessarily happen to me be in combat either. Look at all the people that suffer physical and mental abuse, regardless of the age. That trauma is there. And until you can recognize it, call it out for what it is, learn how to process and deal with it. Because you see, if you don't process out of it, it will always be there like a cancer, and it will grow and it will destroy you.
It's only going to get worse.
I.e., let me say 22 a day as far as suicides.
Oh my God.
If you cannot, that's veterans, way more for civilians. But if you do not open up, veterans, I'm talking to you, man. If you do not open up, find a very high qualified EMDR person that can help walk you through remapping of the brain. That's what I'm doing. That's the DVD series that I'm putting together, is a step-by-step, a Marine talking to his brothers, not a clinician going, well, the diagnosis book says this. The diagnosis, well, I took a class in college 15 years ago that no, dude. I live this crap every day.
Right.
And so you know what I'm saying? I'm real. So let's get real and let's start taking care of business for you
Gotcha.
and your family.
Yeah. Hey, Tom, now what's protocol now? What usually happens when you reach that gap? Are there programs at the VA, or do they just say everybody just kind of do what's good for you? Are there things that you have to do when you're in that transition?
Yes. First off, the VA catches a lot of crap. They do good work, man. I've gone to the VA. They've done some decent things for me. I'm not putting anyone down. I'm not that really that kind.
Yeah,
I'm
I
blunt.
wouldn't think you were.
I'm super honest. If it's black or white, I'm going to tell you what color it is. I'm not going to cookie code it. But they're only trained by clinicians that are taught from the traditional schools that don't understand what a military person's life is like. They don't understand the hardwiring that takes place, so they don't take that into consideration. They pump psychotics into the brain, which does nothing but manipulate it. It doesn't fix anything, but all they're doing is treating the symptoms. They're not treating the cause. And so what I've done is just taken off layer after layer after layer to see what is the cause, what is actually going on. And so I not only study from under one person every day, Casey. I guess I'm just weird, but I'm reading journals, I'm reading tests, I'm reading studies, I'm following Psychology Today, psychiatrists, psychotherapists. I constantly read. That's why I know what I know. And when things are changing, I'm on top of it to be able to get that information out, hopefully. So I don't know everything, but I know a lot. and I know who the people are that do know more than me. And so I guess to kind of answer your question, what should they do? They should really find somebody that is a qualified veteran counselor. They're not a lot, or people that are experts in EMDR. And even within the EMDR world, there are variances because all of us have our own way of doing things. So you might see one doctor do it this way and another doctor do it this way, as far as breathing, anxiety, panic. I don't necessarily get mixed messages and all that I read and study, but people still have their variances. So there is no real, this is it. I think what I'm putting together is as close to this is it that's out there, because I have no agenda. I'm just a simple dude struggling, learning myself, trying to get this information to the people that need it the most. And that really is my whole focus as far as what I'm doing and trying to help these guys.
Understood, and it's awesome. I love this passion that you have, and it's so apparent. You do a bunch of events, and you raise awareness. Can you talk a little bit about some of the stuff that you've done? Because you really put everything into this, man.
Yeah, pretty much, man. This is a calling. This isn't really my job. I am the president of Warrior Wishes Montana. Give a big shout out right here. Okay. This is my office. We meet veterans right where they're at. As far as we're the only organization that does what we do. There are a lot of great organizations, but it's like, I'm on the street. We put them in a hotel. I don't have a phone. We give them a phone and gas. And we meet them where they're at right now to keep them going. It takes a lot of funds. So if anybody's out there that really wants to support, Warrior Wishes Montana at .com, warriorwishesmontana.com could find us, and you can always donate. But I also work with a lot of other organizations, because what I'm trying to do here locally is to be able to bring the veterans in through a funnel, do an assessment, find out what they need as far as records, documentation, mental health, and then I send them out to the various organizations that are out there that help in those specific areas. But one thing I want to give a shout out, and I'll do this later in another show bigger, but the National Exchange Club is really huge. They have 4 major organizational missions that they work with kids and community and things like that. But veterans, I am on a board of one of the networking groups here in Billings, Montana. So what I'm trying to do is encourage veterans to get involved with your local national or exchange club, because they need to know more about us to help us. And we also need to be able to get out and be a part of their world and get out of our little bubble, because we don't really feel comfortable going out into society, because again, Casey, we're not rewired to do that. We still walk around alone in a crowd. And it's just when we do events and people come up that are veterans and they're so lonely and they get emotional that they found us. That's what it's all about, is relationships that you can trust. And so I'm encouraging all of you veterans, find an exchange club somewhere in your area, because they do amazing work. There's no judging going on. They just love us and want to support us. This weekend, Casey, we have a food truck battle going on here in Billings, ran by the Exchange Club. Bro, over 40 food trucks. There's going to be probably 6,000 people there.
Wow.
Oh, they got bands. It's incredible. They did it last year, and it was 5,000 people. They're expecting more this year. The bands, food, all the money, 100% goes to veterans organizations and those that are nonprofits that help the needy. It's cool. It's cool. Yeah.
You're gonna have, so you got 40 food trucks, and you got bands. I know this right in Billings is tell me where to tell the people, if anyone can get there, let them know where exactly it is and what time and how they get tickets, or how does that work?
It's at the Armory here in Billings on Gable. That's where all the military branches are kind of located. They have this massive building and this enormous parking lot. And so I think it starts around I want to say like 11 to probably like 7. Tons and tons and tons and tons of beer. That's a veteran's probably favorite word. Food. Yeah, we all dig that, but it's like beer. So all veterans know how to do that. But we're hoping to get 6,000 people or whatever, and I'm hoping that our organization can get a nice piece of that, so we can continue running. But there's all kinds of cool stuff. But like I think, I don't know, it was you I was sharing with,
You got the
you know,
dunking tank, so
dude, we had a Dunkin' tank. We had a dunk tank at our last event. So that was, yeah, we're trying to do really super fun stuff, not only to raise money that we desperately need, but to bring veterans that are in their little bubble that don't want to
right.
come out. Because in my group, there's about 30 or 40 people in my networking group, and I would probably say 10 to 15 are veterans.
Wow.
So it's super cool. Yeah.
And to meet someone else who has been through it. I mean, like you were talking before. I mean, just seeing that guy that you were talking about break down because he was very lonely, and he finally found a place where he could get some camaraderie
Yeah.
and the help that he needs. That's got to do it for you. I mean, that's got to be
Yeah.
why you get up, I believe.
It is, and it's sad, but it's also a relief when you finally get to meet them and they come up. I've actually had people come up and just weep. You know, women weep. You know, I'm a veteran. My husband's a veteran. We don't go out. We don't do anything. I'm so lonely. You know, and we're like most of them live that way though, Casey. They because they haven't been reintroduced into society. They're still in that military, especially if they're retired. You know, 20 years. You know, I worked with a guy that was in the Navy 28 years. He had a 50% disability of PTSD, and he was never really in a combat zone. It was just the stress of his job for so long that he needs therapy.
And it's that what you're talking about is you gotta, and I'm sure it's not a very pleasant time, but you got to do the work, I believe, right, to open that
Yes.
scab up.
Yeah.
And does it have to do with a lot of talking groups? What's how does it start? Basically, how do you first
Well,
help a client?
dude, that's just so amazing that you brought that up, because that is the $1 million question. Some guys love group.
Yeah.
Some guys will not go to group. Everybody has their own walk. Everybody has their own life. Everybody has their own personality. So really all the above. How does it start? We try to bring them in and see kind of where they're at and their personality and things like that. There's a veterans. It's not a part of the VA. It's just the vet center, they call it. And one of their top veterans counselors, they do group for moral injury and things like that, which I'm going to get into the next segment, PTSD and moral injury, and how do they look? They
Okay.
look a lot alike. So I'll get more into that therapy type session, but some like to do it one-on-one. The thing that I've noticed is I've been a part of a lot of veterans organizations on Facebook, some of them upwards of 800,000. And I have talked to some of them that were contemplating, suicide, talked them off the roof. But a lot of these guys, even when you open up and you say, "Hey man, I can help you," they still won't open up. And that really kills me, because I see in their words the anguish and the pain. And if you know how to relieve some of that, you want to do that. But if they won't reach out, so that's really an individual issue, Casey, but it's the number one question.
I got you. I got you. And I mean, how awesome is that you were there at that time to help some of these people on Facebook? It could have went a different way if you didn't sign on right there. I mean, that's pretty incredible. I know, Mr. Producer. I didn't get to maybe. All right, let me do. All right, let's just do. I know we're late, but we'll do one question, and then let me give you the floor. What do you got?
All right, we have Craig in Phoenix, and Craig says, "My son is supposed to finish active duty next year. When should he start planning for what's next?"
Oh, go on, and thank you.
You can tell him today, literally today. This is when it should start happening. They should start looking at the reprogramming period. They should start looking into some of these methods, depending upon where they're at as far as psychologically. If they're in a combat, it's going to take obviously a lot longer. But if they're not, just like myself, I was not in combat, but still was a Marine. And when I came home, I saw all my friends, I saw all the bars I hung out with, I saw my world that I didn't fit in. And so he's going to have to learn how to quickly move into start finding the needed resources. Let me throw this out there for everybody. P. Thomas Smith LLC is my Facebook page. Reach out to me. P. Thomas Smith Counseling at gmail.com is my email. Reach out to me. So P. Thomas Smith Counseling LLC Facebook page. Ask me any questions that you like, or email me, and I'll try to get information as quickly as possible to these guys.
Great. Thank you very much for writing. And I'm sorry I didn't get to everybody else, but that's the best way to get a hold of you. Let me
Yeah.
give you the last 30 seconds here. You got the floor here. Always a great time talking to you, learning and knowing what you guys, not knowing, but hearing about what you guys go through. And it's pretty amazing. And your passion for helping people, it's just off the charts. Let me give you the last word here, my friend.
Once we get this link put up, I'm going to send it out to everyone that I know. And I hope that everyone that's veterans that get a hold of this, this information is literally life-changing. And again, it's not about me, man. I'm just a simple dude from Waynesboro, Virginia that loves veterans, and this is my calling. And so the next couple of segments, we're going to get more into therapeutic ways of being able to help reprogram yourself and things like that. But right now, man, these guys can reach out at any time at pthomassmithcounseling@gmail.com. And I can get resources to you like right away.
Awesome. That's an amazing guest right there. This is the Thomas Smith Show. Thank you so much. I can't wait to hear what you have to say next. And
likewise,
we'll be right back. Thank you, Thomas.
See you, brother.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the MyTuner Radio, online radio box, and Simple Radio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com, or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcast on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
Mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house. And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned.
This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.